You're not welcome here anymore. Get out." Those were the last words my father said to me before I walked out of the house I grew up in, my fingers still clutching a manila folder filled with financial reports no one had bothered to read. It was supposed to be a family meeting, one of those important Sunday night sit-downs we'd had since I was a kid. But when I stepped into that living room and saw all the chairs filled, not just by my parents and siblings, but by extended family, cousins I hadn't seen in years, even my grandfather, I knew something was off. The air was thick, and every eye turned to me with a single, chilling purpose. The scapegoat had arrived. My name is Julia Monroe. I'm 27 years old. And that night, in the middle of spring, I was officially exiled from my family, not for stealing or lying or harming anyone, but for trying to help. For years, I'd been the quiet fixer, the invisible one who held everything together, the one who was always blamed when things fell apart, no matter who had caused the mess. That meeting didn't break me. It revealed the truth I had been too afraid to face. I had never truly belonged to my own family. A month later, I was living in a tiny Airbnb in Minneapolis, my entire life reduced to 2 suitcases, a coffee maker, and a rescue cat named Milo. I had changed my number, blocked every relative, and poured myself into rebuilding from scratch. I thought that would be the end of it, until the emails started showing up, until the messages were forwarded from old contacts, until my new office got a call from someone in Cedar Rapids, just trying to confirm a few things about Julia Monroe, until the text from my sister, Haley, found its way through the firewall. "Please call. It's Dad. He's been arrested." But let me go back, because none of that makes sense unless you know the full story. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in a modest 2-story house that sat just far enough from the city to feel isolated and just close enough to hear its distant promises of escape. My parents, David and Evelyn Monroe, ran a family furniture store. My brother Lucas, 2 years older, was the golden child, captain of the football team, class president, heir apparent to the business. My younger sister, Haley, was the darling, the baby who could do no wrong. And then there was me. From the outside, we looked like a postcard version of American success. Inside, though, I was cast in a role I didn't audition for, the family's emotional sponge. If Lucas forgot his homework, somehow I distracted him. If Mom burned dinner, I must have stressed her out. If Haley cried, someone would inevitably say, "Julia, what did you say to her?" It became so routine that I started believing maybe I was the problem. Maybe I really did ruin everything just by existing. It started young, too young for me to understand. I remember being 6 and coloring quietly at the kitchen table when I heard the crash of glass from the living room. My mom's favorite vase. I ran in to see what had happened. Lucas pointed at me without blinking. Julia did it. I hadn't even left my seat, but she believed him. That night, I cried into my pillow, wondering what I could have done differently to stop something I hadn't even seen. That night was just the beginning. I used to tell myself it wasn't that bad, that all families had their dynamics, that maybe if I just worked harder, kept my head down, achieved more, they'd eventually see me, not as the one who ruined things, but as the daughter who held everything together. But the truth is, they never wanted me to hold anything. They just needed someone to absorb the damage. As I grew older, the blame evolved. It wasn't just about broken vases and forgotten chores anymore. It became abstract and more cutting. When Dad had a slow sales month, he'd come home angry and silent. If I asked how his day went, he'd sigh and say, "You always have to make everything about you, don't you?" I was 12. I didn't know how to not be a burden. I just knew that my presence seemed to weigh more than anyone else's. By the time I reached high school, I stopped trying to be noticed and started trying to be undeniable. Straight A's, student council, debate team, volunteering on weekends. I figured if I couldn't be loved, I could at least be necessary. My teachers adored me, and my guidance counselor, Mrs. Callahan, once told me, "You've got leadership written all over you. Honestly, Julia, any Ivy League would be lucky to have you." I remember floating home with that praise still echoing in my chest, only to be grounded in reality 5 minutes later. Ivy League. Dad had laughed. We're not made of money. Maybe focus on getting a job at the store instead of chasing dreams that cost more than a house. I might get a scholarship, I whispered, though my throat was tight. Mom didn't even look up from the stove. You always aim too high. Maybe consider a community college. Something more appropriate. Haley, of course, chimed in with a smirk. You just want the attention. That night, I wrote my acceptance essay in silence and cried when no one could hear. Despite them, I got into Northwestern with a full tuition scholarship and partial aid. The envelope arrived in spring, thick, hopeful, promising a life they couldn't imagine and never cared to. I found them in the living room, clustered around Lucas, who'd just received his third rejection letter from a mid-tier state school. He was slumped on the couch, and Mom had one arm wrapped around him like he was the one who needed comforting. I held the letter behind my back. I got in, I said. Northwestern. Full ride. They stared at me like I'd interrupted a funeral. Dad was the first to speak. What's this going to cost us? Not congratulations. Not, we're proud of you. Just suspicion and a financial panic they'd never shown when buying Haley a brand new car for her 16th birthday. You're always trying to show us up, Lucas muttered. We get it. You're the smart one. So I folded the letter in half, tucked it back into the envelope, and swallowed the celebration. In college, I flourished. I made friends who laughed at my jokes, not at me. Professors who saw my ideas as valuable. I learned that not every room needed a scapegoat, but the tether to my family remained. Calls from Mom that started with "How are you?" and ended in guilt. Texts from Haley reminding me that Dad's been on edge since you left. As if my success was a disruption to their dysfunction. After graduation, I had offers in Chicago, in New York, even in Austin, but I turned them all down. Something in me still craved home. Still thought I could fix it if I just tried hard enough. So I moved back to Cedar Rapids, got a marketing job at a mid-sized firm, rented a small studio apartment 12 minutes from my parents' place, and every Sunday night I went to dinner where I was still the problem. Coming back to Cedar Rapids was like stepping into a museum where nothing had been dusted, but everything was exactly as it used to be, right down to the way my mother sighed when I walked through the front door. I kept thinking, maybe if I show them how much I've grown, how successful I've become, they'll finally see me differently. I was wrong. The Monroe family furniture store was struggling. Once a charming staple of the local community, known for handcrafted oak tables and solid maple bookshelves, it had lost its shine in the face of mass-produced imports and online retailers. Still, my father clung to the business like it was his last breath. One Sunday dinner, between bites of meatloaf, Dad muttered something about declining foot traffic. I looked up, cautious but hopeful. I could help, I offered gently. Redesign the website, optimize it for mobile. Maybe run a few targeted ads, just to bring in some younger customers. He didn't even glance up from his plate. Marketing, he said, as if the word tasted bitter. You mean tricking people into buying crap they don't need. I felt the sting, but smiled anyway. Not tricking, storytelling. Showing people what your pieces mean. Sounds like fluff, Lucas chimed in. If it were that easy, we'd already be doing it. Haley giggled behind her wine glass. Maybe Julia wants to be the next CEO. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said nothing. But the next week, I showed up at the store anyway. No announcement. No big pitch. I just started working. Took pictures of the products. Built a Shopify site in my free time. Created an Instagram page with before and after room setups using their pieces. I even reached out to local photographers and offered a trade. Photo shoots for exposure and credit. Little by little, sales began to improve. A few customers mentioned they saw a nightstand on Instagram. A young couple said they discovered the website while searching for rustic, locally made furniture. Dad didn't say thank you, but he stopped calling marketing fluff, and that was enough for me for now. 3 months in, Mom asked if I could look over the business finances. "We've been under some pressure lately," she admitted over a lukewarm cup of chamomile tea. "The loan payments are getting heavy." "What loan?" I asked. She blinked. "The one we took out 2 years ago to renovate the showroom." I had never heard about it. That night, I stayed up cross-checking their business ledgers. What I found made my stomach churn. Multiple loans, some with steep interest rates, maxed out credit cards, overdue invoices, and a glaring cash flow problem. The store wasn't just struggling, it was bleeding out. The next morning, I met with my parents. "You should consider downsizing the warehouse," I said carefully. "Maybe liquidate some aging inventory. A flash sale might help bring in cash." My father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "This is my business. I've run it since before you could spell your own name." "I'm not trying to take over," I said. "I'm trying to help." But help, in my family, had always been a double-edged sword. Weeks later, Dad came to me with a favor. The bank had offered a refinancing deal, but only if someone with a better credit score co-signed the loan. "Just paperwork," he said. "You won't pay a dime." Every financial bone in my body screamed no. But the other part of me, the daughter still starving for approval, whispered yes. I agreed on 3 conditions. I'd have access to the books, I'd be informed of any large expenses, and we'd meet monthly to review everything together. He agreed, reluctantly, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought we might actually fix this together. It started with a text from my mother. Just one line. "Family meeting. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. You must be there." No heart emojis. No sweetheart or love you. Just cold formality, like a summons. Something in my gut twisted. I tried to ignore it, chalk it up to anxiety or overthinking. But by the time I pulled into the driveway the next evening, I knew this wasn't just a meeting. There were too many cars lined up along the street. My grandfather's Buick, Aunt Louise's red Honda, even my cousin Dylan's pickup from 2 towns over. I stepped out of my car slowly, clutching the folder I'd prepared with printouts, bank statements, and marketing metrics, just in case. I had no idea what I'd need to defend, but something told me I would be defending myself. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside to silence. Then, suddenly, every voice stopped. A sea of eyes turned toward me from the living room. Dozens of them. My parents sat side by side on the couch. Lucas and Haley flanked them like bodyguards. Every other seat was taken. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my old piano teacher from church. "There she is," Dad said flatly. "Now we can begin." I stood frozen at the threshold. "Begin what?" "The family situation," Mom said without looking at me. "The one you created." I don't understand." "Don't pretend," Haley snapped. "We know what you did." My grandfather, normally soft-spoken and kind, stared at me with open disappointment. I never thought one of my own grandchildren would destroy what we built. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, clutching my folder like a shield. "You came in here with your fancy degree," Dad thundered, "your big city ideas and marketing garbage, and you ruined our store." I blinked. "What?" "No, the online sales have been steadily increasing." "Don't you dare talk about data," he cut in. "Our regular customers stopped coming in. They said the store doesn't feel like theirs anymore. You scared them off." "My bridge club refuses to shop there now," Aunt Louise chimed in. "They say it's too modern, too cold." My mouth went dry. Why didn't anyone say something earlier? We could have adjusted. "You're supposed to be the expert," Mom said sharply. "We shouldn't have to hold your hand." One by one, they piled on. The website was too sleek. The fonts were too minimalist. The new social posts too unfamiliar. They even blamed the store's updated logo, something Dad had signed off on himself. Every creative decision I had made with care now weaponized against me. And then the financial accusations started. You told us to refinance, Dad growled. Now we're deeper in debt than ever. You were already in debt before that. I snapped before I could stop myself. Because of the gambling. The room went silent. My mother's face hardened. How dare you? I'm not attacking him. I'm stating facts. The withdrawals, the cash flow gap. This is exactly why you're not part of this family anymore, Lucas muttered. You always think you're better than us. You act like you care, Haley hissed. But all you do is make yourself the victim. You insisted on control, Dad said. Those loan conditions making me get your approval for every decision. You handcuffed me. To protect you, I said, nearly breathless. To protect all of us. You agreed to those terms. Under duress, he shouted. What choice did I have? You dangled your credit score over our heads. I opened the folder, trembling. This is the agreement you signed. We were forced to sign it. Mom spat, and look where it got us. I scanned the room, searching desperately for one kind face, one ally, but all I saw were pinched mouths, narrowed eyes, decades of resentment finally finding their scapegoat. My father stood slowly, voice low and cold. You've done enough. You ruined our lives, Julia. Get out, and don't come back. I turned to my mother. Mom, she looked down at her hands. I think it's best if you go. And just like that, I knew. There was nothing left to fight for. I placed the folder on the coffee table, turned around, and walked out. No one followed. No one called my name. No one stopped me. The drive back to my apartment that night felt like sleepwalking through a thunderstorm. My hands shook on the steering wheel. The city lights blurred through my tears. At red lights, I could still hear their voices, the accusations, the betrayal, the final sentence carved into my chest like scripture. You ruined our lives. Get out. I didn't sleep. I paced the floor, hands numb, body vibrating with the kind of grief that has no name. By sunrise, I was at my dining table with a blank notebook, writing down every memory I could recall. Every moment they blamed me, minimized me, twisted my intentions, for full pages front and back. And I wasn't even halfway through. Somewhere between the memory of my 10th birthday being canceled for Lucas's football game and the time Haley threw a tantrum over a gift I couldn't afford, something inside me cracked open, not with pain, with clarity. What if I just left? Not the temporary kind of leaving, not sulking or silence or skipping a few Sunday dinners. What if I actually walked away from the Monroe family for good? The thought terrified me, but it also tasted like freedom. That morning, I requested emergency leave from work. My boss, Megan, barely hesitated. Take what you need. And Julia, that Seattle position we discussed last year, the one you passed on, it's still open. Or if you'd rather stay closer, we've got expansion plans in Minneapolis. Just say the word. I didn't say the word. Not yet. But that conversation planted a seed. By noon, I had called my landlord. The lease buyout wasn't cheap, but manageable. I searched apartments in Minneapolis, crunched my savings, calculated a buffer. I went to the bank to double-check that all my accounts were solely in my name. I gathered documents, birth certificate, passport, degrees, and locked them in a fireproof box. I bought a prepaid burner phone, and I changed my number. The silence that followed was deafening and sacred. No more guilt-laced texts. No veiled manipulation. No sudden voicemails from Dad asking me to fix things he had broken. I blocked them all and forwarded my old number to a monitored voicemail just in case anything urgent came through. Then, I drove. One long, quiet stretch of road north to Minneapolis, a city I barely knew, with nothing but my clothes, my laptop, and a single cardboard box marked Essentials. I rented a tiny Airbnb studio in the Whittier neighborhood. Bare walls, thin mattress, one window with a view of a fire escape. It felt like a sanctuary. Still, the first night, doubt came crashing in. Was I overreacting? Was I selfish? I reached for my phone out of habit, only to remember it was a clean slate now, no contacts, no history. And then the panic attack hit. 20 minutes on the floor, hyperventilating, sweating, certain I had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. But I didn't run back. Instead, I made a list, a 3-step plan. 1. Set up a remote work arrangement while I waited for the Minneapolis branch to finalize. 2. Find a permanent apartment. 3. Establish a routine, anything to ground me. The next morning, I walked to a nearby cafe with my laptop. The barista, a woman with a full sleeve of floral tattoos and a spark in her eye, noticed me fumbling with the Wi-Fi password. "First time here?" she asked, smiling. "First time in Minneapolis," I replied. "Well," she said, handing me a muffin I didn't order, then welcome. "I'm Sophia, and Café Salta is now officially your safe zone." That 5-minute interaction changed everything. I returned the next day, and the day after. Sophia introduced me to her partner, Adam, and a few of their friends who gathered at the cafe every Saturday morning to play cards and argue about poetry. For the first time in my life, no one asked what my family thought of me. No one needed a resume. I was just Julia, and that was enough. 3 weeks into my new life, I visited the phone store to disconnect the old number permanently. The clerk, a teenager with a nose ring and bored expression, offered one last option. "We can pull message logs or voicemails if you want to save anything." Curiosity got the better of me. I nodded. 20 minutes later, I was staring at a printout of 89 text messages, 26 voicemails, and 53 missed calls, all from Cedar Rapids. The earliest were filled with rage. "My father, stop this nonsense and call me back." "My mother, you're making things worse." "Lucas, you're always so dramatic." But as the weeks went on, the tone shifted. Confusion, then panic, then desperation. The last voicemail was from Haley. "Julia, it's bad. Like really bad. Dad's in trouble. Please call." I sat in the corner of the store, holding the printouts like a deck of secrets. I didn't cry. I didn't feel satisfaction either. Just a hollow ache that felt older than I was. That night, I got the call at work. "Julia Monroe?" "Yes. Speaking." "I've been trying to find you for weeks," the voice snapped. "It's Haley." My pulse quickened. "How did you get this number?" "It doesn't matter. You need to come home. Dad's case is going to court. His lawyer needs character witnesses. Also, the bank's asking questions about the loan. The one you co-signed." There it was, no greeting, no apology, no acknowledgement of the firestorm they had set. Just demands. "I'm not coming back to Cedar Rapids," I said evenly. "What? Don't be ridiculous. This is family." "You mean the same family that told me I ruined their lives and kicked me out of the house?" "That was just Dad being upset. You know how he gets." "I do," I said coldly. "That's exactly why I left." There was a pause, sharp and crackling through the line. Then came the guilt. "So you're just abandoning us? When things get hard?" "I'm protecting myself," I replied. "I advised against the loan. I only agreed with strict conditions, conditions that were violated. I've already spoken to my own attorney." "You got a lawyer?" "Yes. And I've submitted a written statement to the bank detailing my limited role. If anyone tries to implicate me, they'll be in for a surprise." Haley's voice dropped an octave. "So you're throwing Dad under the bus?" "I'm telling the truth," I said. Something this family never made much room for. The call spiraled. Accusation. Pleas. Thinly veiled threats. "I swear, Julia, if you think you can just run away and start over, you're wrong. People talk. What if your new boss hears what kind of person you really are?" That was the moment I understood what was happening. This wasn't about saving Dad. This was about reasserting control, dragging me back into the role I had finally escaped from. I didn't respond. I ended the call and walked straight into my supervisor's office. "Megan, do you have a minute?" She looked up from her laptop and smiled. Always. What's up? I closed the door behind me. I need to tell you something about why I left Cedar Rapids. Over the next 30 minutes, I laid it all out. Family dysfunction. The store's collapse, the loan, the gambling, the threats. I didn't cry. I didn't sugarcoat. When I finished, Megan leaned back in her chair. Thank you for telling me. That took courage. And Julia, let me make this clear. Your work here speaks for itself. Whatever drama your family tries to stir up doesn't concern me. You're one of our strongest strategists. You've rebuilt entire brand portfolios under budget. She paused, then added, honestly, if your sister calls me with anything, it'll only make me admire you more. The relief was so overwhelming, I had to grip the armrest to steady myself. That night, a final message came in, forwarded from my old number. This isn't over. No name, but I knew the sender. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I hit delete. No reply, no panic, no guilt, because maybe it wasn't over for them. But for me, it was done. 6 months after I left Cedar Rapids, my life looked nothing like it used to. And for the first time, that was a good thing. My new apartment in Minneapolis wasn't fancy, but it felt like mine. Exposed brick, uneven hardwood floors, and giant windows that caught the morning light just right. I filled the space slowly, carefully, no longer choosing things to impress guests or please a visiting mother. Just colors and textures and books that made me feel something. Milo, my one-eyed rescue cat, would curl against my side every evening as I sipped tea on the couch. His soft purr reminded me that comfort didn't have to be complicated, that affection could be unconditional. Work at the firm was thriving. Megan had given me full creative control over several new accounts, and I'd earned the trust of clients, not with flash, but with quiet strategy and sharp insight. I no longer second-guessed my ideas, waiting for someone to interrupt or override me. I'd even started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends. There was something deeply grounding about walking dogs who had no expectations of me, just joy at a leash and a gentle hand. The staff welcomed me in like I'd always been there. No questions asked, no histories dragged in. Still, some nights, I'd wake from dreams that left me breathless. I was back in that living room, surrounded by accusing faces. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. I'd wake tangled in blankets, heart pounding. The old guilt didn't vanish. It just got quieter over time, like a radio slowly losing signal. And then one Saturday, during a poetry slam at Café Salta, I heard a voice that pierced me straight through. Her name was Jessica. Her poem was about leaving a partner who gaslit her into believing she was always the problem. Every line hit like truth laced in glass. After her set, I stepped outside for air and found her already waiting. "You felt that?" she asked softly. "Too much," I said. We talked for hours that night. She told me about the months it took her to trust herself again, about the shame she carried for loving someone who dismantled her piece by piece. I told her a little about my family. Not everything, just enough. "You should meet my brother," she said suddenly. "He's stuck in a roommate situation that sounds way too familiar. They blame him for everything, and he stays because he doesn't want to be dramatic. It's exhausting to watch. You'd get it." A week later, I met Michael. Younger than me, kind eyes, slumped shoulders that reminded me of mirrors I'd long since thrown away. We met at a coffee shop. He was quiet at first. Then, slowly, his story poured out, how he cleaned up after everyone, absorbed tension like a sponge, always felt like his presence was the problem. I didn't offer advice. I told him what I'd learned the hard way. "Being the scapegoat doesn't mean you're broken," I said. "It just means you are surrounded by people who refuse to look in a mirror." He blinked, then smiled. "No one's ever said that to me." From that day on, something shifted, not just in him, but in me. I started attending a support group for adults from dysfunctional families. Then I started co-facilitating, then leading. People came in with tear-streaked faces and stories so familiar they felt like pages from my old life. And I told them what I wish someone had told me sooner. You don't have to carry what was never yours. You don't have to stay just because they gave birth to you. You don't have to be the reason they never learned to change. And slowly, word by word, we healed. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. The email came on a Wednesday morning. Subject: in town, would you consider coffee? It was from my mother. She wrote that she'd be in Minneapolis for medical consultation. Just her. No expectations. No talk of the past. Just a quiet request to see that I was okay. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I brought it to Dr. Klein, my therapist in Minneapolis. We discussed every possible outcome, every emotion it stirred up. I didn't want to punish her, but I didn't know her comfort either. In the end, I agreed. A 30-minute meeting. Neutral ground. A cafe in Pike Place Market with wide windows, lots of people and a clear exit. I got there early. My palms were sweating. When she arrived, I barely recognized her. She looked older, tired in a way I'd never seen before. No makeup, no practiced posture, just a small, hesitant woman who used to be the one I feared most. She stopped when she saw me and didn't move to hug. "Julia," she said softly, voice cracking like a twig. "You look well." "Thank you," I replied. "I am." We sat. We didn't order. We didn't touch. The silence hovered. Then, without prompting, she began. "Your father was sentenced last month. 2 years probation. The business is gone. We sold the house." Her voice didn't tremble. She'd rehearsed this. "I know," I said gently. "My attorney kept me informed." She looked away. "I still don't understand you," she said after a moment. "Even as a child you were so different, so quiet, so hard to reach." I didn't respond. She kept going. "You were always the one who absorbed everything. I think we got used to that, too used to it, until one day you didn't absorb it anymore." A silence passed between us, heavier than the first. Finally, she met my eyes. "I wanted to blame you for walking away, for not coming back, for letting the family fall apart. And now," I asked, not accusing, just curious, "I see we were broken long before you left. You just refused to keep pretending we weren't." It wasn't an apology, but it was the first time in my life she'd admitted anything. I nodded, keeping my voice even. "I'm building a life here, one that's good for me. I can't go back to the way things were." "I understand," she said, and this time maybe she meant it. We talked for a while longer, nothing deep, nothing painful. 30 minutes passed, and I stood to leave. She did too. At the door, she asked, "Would you be open to occasional calls? Maybe just to check in." I thought for a moment. "I'd be open to that, but only if you can respect my boundaries. I'm not here to fix anyone anymore." She nodded. "I'll try." We parted with an awkward half-hug that neither of us quite committed to. It was enough. Over the next few months, she called occasionally. Short conversations, weather, books, recipes. Sometimes she'd ask about my job. I'd answer, but I never offered more than I wanted to, and she never pushed. My father called once, 6 months into his probation. He talked about rebuilding the family name, launching a new business. Wanted me involved. I declined. He called me bitter, said I was holding grudges, said therapy had turned me into someone cold. I told him therapy helped me see that forgiveness doesn't mean submission, that I could forgive him and still walk away. He didn't call again. Lucas never reached out. Haley sent 2 emails, one cruel, one desperate. I didn't respond to either. My family remained exactly as they had always been, but I wasn't. 1 year after I left Cedar Rapids, I stood at the edge of the water in Minneapolis, watching the sun fracture across the surface. Behind me was a life of silence, shame, and survival. Ahead was mine to build. I took out my phone. A new number. A new name in so many ways. There was a message from my mom. Thinking of you today. Hope you're well. I smiled. Typed back, I am. Hope you are too. Then I turned off my phone, breathed in the wind, and let the quiet surround me. Not the silence of being dismissed, but the peace of being enough. Because I had finally learned. Some family doesn't get to come with you. Some history doesn't get a rewrite. Some endings are the most honest kind of freedom. And choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's sacred.